Today on the news and why it matters, Planned Parenthood, you know, that organization that really needs our taxpayer dollars to, just stay afloat. Well, they've just announced that they will spend $45 million on the 2020 elections. That's weird. A lot to get into there. Also, a climate expert shreds claims made by our good friend AOC. We've got a lot coming up on this Friday. You don't want to miss it, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Friday. I am Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by Pat Gray, the one and only Pat Gray of Pat Gray Unleashed. Thanks for being here. We've got Giancarlo Sopo, whose name I really, really like saying. I just want to just keep saying it. Although you're not Italian. Do you have Italian in you?
So supposedly I have Italian ancestry on my dad's side, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt so I don't pull an Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, you never want to do that.
Yeah,
you never want to do that.
I have to, I have yet to confirm it.
I have to say it Italian, though. He's a writer at theblaze.com. You can find his work there. And also our social media director and guru. I like to say guru. I like to say that. Social media guru, John Ruggio.
And I'm actually Italian, so.
Oh, okay. John Ruggio. That doesn't work as well.
More hand motion.
It doesn't work as well. We got a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So there's like over 50 million people in America who miss work just due to pain because we hurt all the time. These Americans, you guys are usually spending over $2,000 a year on just pain relief, and 66% of you expect to just live the rest of your life in pain. That's really depressing. We hear from literally tens of thousands in this audience who tell us how Relief Factor has changed their lives by helping with their pain. I can tell you from personal experience, I use Relief Factor and it helps me. I had a car accident back in 2013, had a bunch of herniated discs, things that you don't want, things that cause a lot of pain. Relief Factor is the only thing that has helped for me. It is 100% natural. It is made from botanical and fish oils, and so it targets the inflammation in your body, which is often the root cause of your pain. You just don't know it because you're masking it with like big pharma nasty stuff. Don't do that. Try Relief Factor. They have a 3-week quick start pack. It is $19.95. That's $1 a day, and 70% of the people who try that go on to keep ordering more. It's working for that many people. It can work for you if you are one of those millions who are in pain. Don't hesitate. Go to relieffactor.com. Get that 3-week quick start pack. That is relieffactor.com. Planned Parenthood. Oh, I can't wait to get into this story, especially because Pat, off air, he reminded me he loves Planned Parenthood.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, what do you hate? Women's health? Is that what you hate?
Reproductive health. That's a great point. That's a great point.
I love their reproductive health. I think that's wonderful.
Planned Parenthood's political arm will spend $45 million. I love the way this is written. It says on pro-abortion candidates in 2020, which is like, okay, so on the Democratic candidates, I guess. I don't know any of them who are not totally pro-abortion. This is the most ever spent on the organization, by the organization in an election season. And they say the stakes have never been higher. The Trump administration has managed to undo so much over the last 3 years. The fact that this summer the Supreme Court might gut Roe versus Wade is an indicator of their intention, and they've never been so bold. The money will flood into 9 battleground states. They are Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. I do want to show one of these ads because it is just insufferable, and we want you to suffer along with us because misery loves company. But I love this talking point that the Trump administration has managed to undo so much over the last 3 years, and that the Supreme Court might gut Roe v. Wade over the summer. I've got no indication that we have a Supreme Court who is ready to do that.
Not at all. I wish it was true. I wish they were right, but I don't see any indication that the Supreme Court will gut Roe v. Wade. They're not even talking about taking up any abortion issues right now.
Well, and you even have, I mean, I know that they screamed in the streets like it was the end of the world when Kavanaugh became, confirmed. But Kavanaugh has sided with Planned Parenthood, when it comes to Medicaid funding.
Yeah, so both Gorsuch and Kavanaugh said in their hearings that they felt that Roe v. Wade was established law, that there was precedent around it, that they probably wouldn't mess with it.
Right.
So this is just propaganda. Planned Parenthood is just an extension of the Democratic Party.
Yeah. John, what do you think?
Yeah, it's just fear mongering. There's really nothing there. So.
Yeah. Okay, so I apologize in advance if any of you have high blood pressure. I hope that you've taken your meds. And without further ado, I would like to show you one example of this We Decide 2020, where all of these millions of dollars are being spent in political ads. Here's what that looks like.
Can I be blatantly honest? My life is at stake in this next election.
It is a matter of life and death to have access to quality health care.
Birth control.
To safe and legal abortion.
And accurate sexual education. And that's not happening right now.
Our reproductive rights have come into question yet again.
I was a young nurse when Roe v. Wade was passed. Now we worry about protecting it every day.
There is no reason politicians should be telling me when or if I can build a family.
We need to go forward, not backward. We didn't always have the right to vote. Many of my family members grew up in segregation.
My dad grew up in a country where he didn't have a voice, but I do.
Voting is a way to do something when you wish you could just do something.
That's the whole point of our system.
It's the basis of our democracy.
Politicians think they decide what we do with our own bodies, but guess what?
We decide
To go out there and make the change that we want to see.
We decide who our leaders are.
Nosotros elegimos nuestro futuro.
We decide our future.
We decide.
We decide.
We decide.
The left is fascinated with this, saying the same thing over and over and over again with different people. We choose, we decide, we decide, we decide.
And in 2016, they did the same thing against
they did.
Trump.
Yes, they did. It's agonizing. I mean, that is agonizing that the legislative body should not, they shouldn't have any say in murder issues, in actually taking human life. Of course they should. Of course they should. Nobody's telling you when to have a family or how to build that family. That's not what it's about. And they know it. They know it's about taking human life. They know that.
It also seems like they checked off all the intersectional boxes.
They did.
Yeah, there was the trans.
Yes, they had the trans
man.
I guess I don't know what reproductive rights he's talking about. I got news for him. He can't have an abortion.
And the first line of the video, like, my life is literally at risk in this next election. It's just everything's an exaggeration. And they're never willing to say this is about abortion. It's always about reproductive health care or women's health care.
It's a nice euphemism.
Yeah, and if there's no problem with abortion, why don't you just say it? I mean, why do you have to come up with these different terms to define it?
That's a great point. Yeah. Giancarlo, I know you specifically have a little bit of a personal background that may take issue with the woman who said, well, my dad grew up in a place where he didn't have a say and he couldn't do this and he couldn't do that. That's why it's so important for me.
Yeah, so usually what happens in like regimes overseas, so like where my parents are from Cuba, is that abortions are actually mandatory. And where these oppressive governments, they try to restrict population growth by forcing women to have abortions. Sometimes they'll also perform abortions without women even requesting one. So it's like the complete opposite. Yeah, they have it completely wrong. And also, I thought it was curious, like you said, that they would start the commercial with saying, "Oh, my life is literally at risk." Actually, you know whose life is literally at risk? The child's.
I mean, it's just that there's a baby that dies every single time an abortion is performed. But what is that? Especially when they say we want accurate sexual education.
Of course, they don't want anybody to talk about abstinence because it's not accurate that prevents babies.
Right.
If you don't want to get pregnant, don't have sex. That's not accurate.
Well, or, the fact that the baby, it is actually a baby inside you. It's not like a cantaloupe.
Yeah, like every single biology textbook published, I don't know, for like decades now has said that human life begins in the womb. Nobody says otherwise. To pretend otherwise, this is sheer foolishness. So if anyone is peddling inaccurate information and fake science, it's the left.
And if they're saying that their life is literally at stake in this and that's hinging on abortion, what century are you living in? How often do women die in childbirth in the United States of America?
That's pretty rare.
That is really rare. It almost never happens, but we hear about it all the time in the safe abortion thing. Look, I've got personal experience with unsafe abortions in my past. My grandmother died from an unsafe abortion.
Wow.
She tried to abort a baby with a hanger and got a terrible infection and died from it. And I still don't favor abortion. It's still murdering, killing a baby. It's unbelievable how we've allowed them to spin this discussion and talk about women's health care rights when, like we just said, it's abortion. You're ending human life here.
Yeah. And on that topic, there was a tweet that surfaced that this particular activist is in a lot of hot water for. Her name is Renee Sherman. She calls herself the Beyonce of abortion storytelling, so you already know she is a really credible person. And she tweeted this week, "I've talked to my 5-year-old niece about my work and abortion in an age-appropriate way. She understands the kids are a handful and sometimes people don't want to be pregnant. She gets it because it's quite simple." I mean, John, what could possibly go wrong with telling a 5-year-old girl that, sometimes kids suck and we don't want them? Yeah. You're lucky. All right, kid, you're lucky.
It's grotesque, really, if you think about it. And think of like the mindset that child is now going to grow up with, that kids are a hassle, they're a burden, and if you don't like them, you could just get rid of them. Like, I can't imagine as a 5-year-old having that idea planted in my mind and what I might grow up into with that kind of stuff.
How that might shape your opinions and your outlook on everything after that point of being a freaking 5-year-old who, it's really quite simple. Giancarlo, it's quite simple, right, for a 5-year-old to understand all of this.
Yeah, so I think the left is completely bulldozing over the innocence of children, and not just on this issue, but also now the Democrats in Florida are trying to restrict a law that would prevent doctors from performing irreversible gender-changing surgeries on children. So the left is just completely out of control. Like we've always seen children in this country as being sacred and worthy of protection, and we've completely done away with that in our culture.
Yeah, that's a great point. Pat, what do you think?
I told all my kids that we didn't actually want them when they were 5 and said it was just an accident that we didn't get you aborted in the first place, and now we got to deal with you, and you're really a problem. And I think they seem to get it.
Did they?
They really got it.
They
Yeah,
appreciated it.
Yeah. So they all grew up as axe murderers, but it's okay. We need a few axe murderers in this country.
I mean, it really is. They have just completely tossed aside the innocence of children.
Yeah, it's gross.
I mean, because you're not even talking about just the kids who say that they want to be transgender, probably because their parents have implanted that idea into their, small heads. But you've got them, dragging them to drag queen storytime hour. You've got them they tell me all the time that, I explain gender to my kid at 4 and he can be whatever he wants and he can do this and he can do that. And I'm like, your 4-year-old, probably doesn't comprehend much beyond,
no, of course not.
Thinking poop is funny.
Yeah.
And
they want to be Baby Yoda.
Yeah, and being tired and grumpy.
Yeah.
There's not much more that they can comprehend besides that. What do you think, John?
So when Planned Parenthood talks about proper sexual education, what you have to understand is that Abby Johnson, the former director of Planned Parenthood, who did the movie Unplanned, is great on this issue. She said they want to be in your schools, teaching your kids and letting them know that Planned Parenthood is a safe resource for them. So they're trying to implant themselves inside the school where the parents don't have any control, and then they can start filling the kids' heads with those ideas. So it's really weird propaganda technique that's really gross if you think a lot about it.
Very, very devious
It's despicable.
At the minimum. All right, coming up next, you're not going to want to miss this. A climate expert tells us what we've all been saying this entire time, that maybe the world is not ending and all of the activists should maybe just take it down a notch. Stay with us. We'll be back. It was Beer Friday and I forgot. You are going to laugh. You are going to cheer when you hear what climate expert Michael Shellenberger said. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Deborah. Deborah's home was stolen, and I don't mean that some burglar came in and like stole all of her belongings. I mean, scammers on the internet actually stole her home right out from under her. Yeah, the FBI calls home title theft one of the fastest growing white collar crimes. I know, Pat, you talked to the home title lock guys. They came in and they literally just like stole your house, your home title right
15 minutes.
right in front of you.
Yeah. And they even showed me the signature that they did. I thought it was my signature. That's how good they were at forging it. So, yeah, it can happen. When I found out it can happen that easily, I knew I had to have that kind of protection.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it. You've got all of your equity. You know, that's like your retirement fund, right? All of your equity in your house, and it could just be gone. You guys don't realize that this can happen, but all the home titles are stored on the internet. So if it's stored on the internet, you got hackers, you got really bad people that have access to it. It's sold on the dark web for like $40. Your $80,000 in equity gone for $40. You got to go to HomeTitleLock.com, register your address to see if you are already a victim. You would not know it unless you go to Home Title Lock, because no identity theft program, no bank, like nothing else protects you from this. But lucky for you, we have got you 60 risk-free days of protection if you go to HomeTitleLock.com. Like I said, enter in your address. It's the only way to find out if you have already been a victim of this. It is HomeTitleLock.com. Michael Shellenberger, president of Environmental Progress, which, if you can tell by that name, this is not a conservative environmental group. It is a progressive environmental group. They are very concerned with climate change. He had a little bit to say in House testimony today. Yesterday. He was testifying in front of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology on the science of climate change. And he, as you will find out, has a little bit different opinion than, say, Greta Thunberg and AOC. Watch.
I'm an energy analyst and environmentalist dedicated to the goals of universal prosperity, peace, and environmental protection. Between 2003 and 2009, I advocated for large federal investments in renewables, many of which were made as part of the 2009 stimulus. And since 2013, I've worked with climate scientists for the continued operation of nuclear plants around the world and have helped prevent emissions from increasing the equivalent of adding 23 million cars to the road. I also care about getting the facts and the science right. I believe scientists, journalists, and advocates have an obligation to represent climate science accurately, even if doing so reduces the saliency of our issue. No credible scientific body has claimed climate change threatens the collapse of civilization, much less the extinction of the human species, and yet some activists, scientists, and journalists have made such apocalyptic assertions, which I believe contribute to rising levels of anxiety, including among adolescents, and worsening political polarization.
Pat, does he get kicked out of the scientific community?
Oh, yes.
Canceled.
Yes, definitely.
He's a denier, climate denier.
Yeah.
The other thing that was great in there was him saying that we've got to tell the truth, even if it reduces the saliency. Well, that's a new thing for the movement, because they've said for decades now that we should hype this thing up, even if it's not true, to get people so worried about it that they actually take action. And that's been what they've been doing the whole time, is doing this extremist nonsense that is scaring the crap out of people, and they're doing this fear-mongering, and you've seen how it affects the next generation, like Greta Thunberg. So for him to bring in a little voice of reason into this thing is fantastic. They've been harping on this 12 years, then it was 11, now it's already down to 10.
That's
we
weird,
lost
because
2 years in about a month and a half.
Have we found out how that happened?
I don't know. And he's right. Even the IPCC at the UN has tried to say, we didn't say that.
We never said that, guys.
Our report didn't say that.
Yeah.
So for him to say it in front of Congress, that's huge.
And Pat, I have actually heard on your program, Pat Gray Unleashed, that you've gone over just since the beginning of whenever they first started saying that climate change was happening. I mean, it was what, in the 60s?
Yes, 60s and early 70s, and that things were going to end in 10 years from that time.
Yeah.
So when 1980 comes around, we're all going to be underwater. They predicted that England would be gone by now, underwater. They've predicted all kinds of horrific events that just have never occurred. They've been wrong on every prediction they've ever made.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember all the talk about the ozone layer. You don't hear about that anymore.
That if you can't break the styrofoam in the styrofoam cups because it would mess with the ozone layer.
Or you could use hairspray. I remember that one too.
Yeah, I never abided by that one at all. No, but I mean, it's incredible that you have this community who, as Pat pointed out, has literally been wrong on everything, and yet somehow we still deem them totally credible.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to bring people from the right over to like thinking that this is a problem, we need to address this, this is the kind of guy that we want to hear from. Someone who's going to tell us the facts, whether it helps his cause or hurts it. Instead, we get AOC telling us that we're going to die in 10 years and Greta Thunberg saying, I want to go back to school. I deserve to be on the other sides of the ocean. And it's like, how are we supposed to take that seriously? Yeah. Like, come on.
Something tells me Greta does not want to go back to school.
No, she's living it up.
Something tells me she is enjoying her yacht time. Before we go, really quickly, President Trump and Jim Acosta had another tense exchange during a media briefing where Acosta pressed the president to make a statement on a statement from Ukrainian associate of Rudy Giuliani, Lev Parnas, who of course is not what you would call credible and also in his own legal trouble. So let's watch that brief exchange.
But I don't know him. I had never had a conversation that I remember with him. Certainly, let me just tell you, you just have to take a look at the polls. Quiet. You just have to take a look at the pictures. You just have to take a look at the polls. You see, I don't need anybody's help. We're doing phenomenally well. The economy is the best it's ever been.
So Parnas now is because the Trump administration has come out and said he's not credible, he's not telling the truth, there's no reason to take him seriously.
He's like the Julie Swetnick of
he really is. And so Parnas came back and said, well, every time you say that, I'm going to post a photo of the two of us. As if having a photo with you and someone else means that you guys are working together in cahoots to, break the law.
Anyone can take a photo with the President of the United States if they're willing to pay like $1,000 for a rubber chicken dinner. Yeah, that's the way it works. Yeah. So there's nothing there.
There's nothing there, but it does feel good every time President Trump says anything snappy to Jim Acosta, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. And I mean, Acosta interrupted him like 4 times after asking him the question. Yeah. Let him answer the question. And he very calmly said, quiet, which was very appropriate, but the left is all upset about that too.
Yeah, John, what do you think?
Yeah, it's all stage time for Jim Acosta. He thinks it's his big moment, and to like make a speech and correct the president while he's answering a question, that's completely inappropriate.
Well, that's what I love is that they want to get onto the president for being disrespectful to the media, as if the media has no, responsibility to be respectful to the president.
And this was at the White House in front of a bunch of children who were there to talk about religious freedom in schools, and it just it rubs me the wrong way when all those guests are there and you're like badgering the president with these questions. It's,
right.
It rubs me the wrong way because Jim Acosta's Cuban and I want to root for my people. But I can't. They can keep him.
You know who Jim Acosta's biggest fan is?
Who?
Jim Acosta.
Oh, that's true.
Right, we'll be back.
No doubt about that.
Yeah. Before we go into overtime, let's see what we've got coming up. Justice Department reportedly investigating James Comey over FBI leaks. Oh, that's sad. You hate to see anything like that happen to James Comey, who certainly doesn't have it coming whatsoever. Also, Senator Martha McSally of Arizona, CNN is really, really mad at her because she exchanged some words with one of their reporters. I want to get your take, gentlemen, on whether or not you think it was appropriate for her to say. Also, just for funsies, we've got Pornhub is being sued by a deaf man because the adult video site does not have subtitles.
Travesty.
Is that hard to spell? Or maybe that's why they don't have this.
Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, insightful analysis to come. Don't forget, if you have not yet already subscribed, you gotta subscribe to Stu Does America, a new show. It is starting next week, January 21st. It is starting, so you gotta go to YouTube and subscribe to Stu Does America. Also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, by the way, you can subscribe to my channel as well if you haven't already. It is Sarah Gonzalez Unfiltered. You can find that on YouTube as well. Simple search will do it. Also, youtube.com/Sarah Gonzalez Unfiltered. We got a lot coming up. It's going to be a fun overtime. Go to blazetv.com and catch it.